Titanic Talk with Nelson Aspen and Alexandra Boyd. Here we feature stories from the independent documentary Ship of Dreams Titanic Movie Diaries and everything else to do with the iconic ship. From James Cameron's epic groundbreaking movie to the history and legacy of Titanic herself. Join us and our special guests as we continue the 25th anniversary celebrations of Titanic. This is your first-class ticket to everything aboard the Ship of Dreams.
My name is Nelson Aspen, and you're back for another webisode of Titanic Talk, your first-class ticket to all things aboard the Ship of Dreams. Now, my co-host, Alexandra Boyd, this all was born out of her documentary film, Ship of Dreams Titanic Movie Diaries, which is, of course, as you probably know by now, a love letter to the film in which she appeared, 1997 James Cameron's Titanic. But it's not the only love letter to James Cameron's work. There is a new show running off-Broadway that is smashing records, popularity, critics, and fans alike. You don't even have to be a Titanic fan to like it, but it will help. And we have some of the creative forces behind Titanique today. One of the co-authors and director, Ty Blue, and one of the stars who basically can play any female role within the show. I don't think she's been tasked to play any of the male roles, but she could probably do that too, Courtney Bassett. So you darling theater-loving talents, welcome to Titanic Talk, Courtney and Ty.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. And
right
you would
here,
be wrong. She has also played a male role as well.
Oh, wait, I have?
Wait, did you?
Well, Ruth.
That's right.
Hold
That's right.
Beautiful red tresses.
It is played by a man in the show, yes.
That is true. Well, we're avoiding pronouns in this conversation today, but let's start with Alexandra telling us what sort of spawned her love letter to Titanic, and then we'll hear from Ty about what spawned his.
Well, briefly, having been in the film and having had this extraordinary experience, I realized back in 1998, after the film won all the 11 Oscars and so forth, I was still very tight with a lot of the actors who'd played these small supporting roles. And somebody said, wouldn't it be great if we all wrote a diary? And I think a couple of people had. And I said, no, it's going to happen. I sort of became like the headmistress with asking everybody to hand in their homework, which was essentially a first-person account of auditions and hearing about getting the job and walking onto the set for the first time. Just these amazing, never to be repeated experiences, which somehow in the back of our minds was going to be a one-off. And we tried to get them published, and that was back in the day before you could self-publish on the internet. So the moment passed, and I had 29 of these 29 actors, including my own diaries. So here comes the 25th anniversary, and I'm sure you felt a similar wave of, there's a moment in time here where people are still in love with the story, with the film, with Jack and Rose, with its origins in Belfast, and all of these things that tie into, and Celine Dion, all of these things that tie into this extraordinary phenomenon that's Titanic. So I have a couple of co-producers, and I said, I've got these diaries and I want to sit my actor friends down and have them read the diaries and evoke memories and anecdotes. But at the same time, because of the wonders of the internet, I have connected with these amazing super fans who they're the keepers of the flame of this movie in particular. And it seemed just entirely appropriate to involve them as well, and that's where this love letter grew and grew. And for me now, as not an actress so much anymore, but as a director and a filmmaker, the love letter came out for me for the power of the movies and the movie industry through the channel of this boat. And so we have Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, which is a documentary which you can watch right now on Vimeo.
And then Ty decides to go a whole other way with satire, comedy, and song. Ty, what was your origin story with Titanique?
Well, I think Alexandra has hit it on the head. It's a love letter situation as well. That's really all it is. 7, 8 years ago now. I was in LA, had escaped to New York, was like over theater. I was destined to do TV, and somehow I ended up like running this supper club where they did like parodies of films, semi-produced but staged, and used pop songs interpolated throughout to kind of help move the parody forward. And I did probably 7 of those in a row. And in the midst of all of that, over the course of a few years, Constantine, who is a co-writer and plays Jack in the show, he came to me one day and he was like, I have an idea. We should do Titanic next, and we should do all Celine Dion songs, and Celine should host it, and Marla should play Celine, and I'll play Jack. And I was like, okay. And I thought it was genius, just conceptually, right? Her tie into the movie, and using her catalog as a score specifically. And so I took to the venue, and they were like, meh.
If you're not watching this, listening to on a podcast, my face just went, what?
Yeah. Well,
after doing all those parodies of all those other movies, this didn't fit into the remit. What?
It was because it came from me.
Carry on.
Yeah, it was because it wasn't her idea. I think this is what it really was. But anyway, so then 2 years went by, and I just could not stop thinking about this, thinking this is such a smart idea, and it's 2 huge intellectual properties intersecting in a magical way. And we had really gotten into a rhythm and a form that worked on these parodies with these pop songs. And Donald Trump got elected, and then I got really sad.
That's a whole other parody.
It's a whole other parody. All I remember is this. 3 days after he won the election, I woke up in my bed, and there's like an empty bottle of Pinot Noir on the table. There's like 3 smoked blunts to the left. There is an empty box of pizza in the bed under the sheets by my feet, and CNN is still on, and I'm like in a stupor, and I look down at myself, and I think I've shat myself in my sleep, and I said to myself, "Self, this ain't it." And instantly, it's like, for the record, I did not shat myself. It was like it was like melted chocolate that I had fallen asleep eating. It was a bag of chocolate morsels that melted all over my body.
Right.
And
okay.
in that moment,
that's how hot you are.
In that moment, it's like the spirit of Celine came to me and said, "It's time to write that damn thing," because I needed to laugh, and it really just came from like, I don't know what to do to make sense of reality. And so I immediately texted Connie and Marla, who is Celine, and I said, let's just block out Monday nights. Let's get together. Let's just start writing this thing for fun. I'll produce a one-off concert, and we'll see if anything comes of it. That's literally why we started doing it.
But it's silly in a smart way. You find yourself laughing, like, I can't believe I'm laughing at this, but it's smart and it's savvy, and of course it's satirizing the James Cameron movie as if Celine Dion has injected herself into the film. And Courtney, you have the obligation to cover so many of the different roles. I would imagine the most challenging to do would be Celine Dion herself, just for covering the vocal range. How did you come into the equation of Titanic?
So my origin story with this amazing show that absolutely stole my heart away. I auditioned 3 years ago, right before the pandemic. It was like, yeah, I think I hadn't even heard back yet from the team, and we were in quarantine. I went into the room, I heard about this show, I said yes to the audition. I knew our producer. I knew it was going to be a smash hit just by seeing that they had these 2 intellectual properties, like Ty mentioned. I went in with a Celine Dion impression that I had been working on for years and years and years. Vocally, and had watched her and gotten to her essence, which is just this kooky, crazy, like angel alien from heaven, which she is, And so I was already in love with Celine. I go into the room, and surprise, surprise, I fall in love with these people behind the table, Ty, Connie, and Marla. And I fall in love with the piece. It is hysterical. It is so smartly written. And of course, I went in loving Titanic as well. It's the first movie, I was thinking about this, and I was able to watch a little bit of your documentary, Alexandra, and it made me think that I have to write my own Titanique diaries of my time in this show, because this is the origin story of this. And I am now one of the oldest cast members that I've been with it for 3 years, and have had the privilege of being able to work on Celine all this time. Had loved the movie. It was the very first movie that I was able to go to without my parents. My brother and his friend were my chaperones. And I remember just thinking of candy and Ty's chocolate. We had Sour Patch Kids, and every time that Leonardo DiCaprio came on the screen, we saved our Sour Patches, our red Sour Patches, because they're the best Sour Patches, for when Leo came on, because it was like, oh, Leo, he was my first crush. And I had this Leonardo DiCaprio wall in my bedroom at like 8 or 9 years old. So in love with both things. And yeah, Celine, I love singing it. It's my most favorite thing to sing on the earth is her music and her style of singing. And yeah.
Alexandra went through in making the documentary, and she can speak to this, the challenges of fair use and legally what she could and couldn't use. I would imagine this is a big challenge, or maybe not. Ty, what did you have to go through to use the Titanic characters, to use the Celine Dion songs? And does she know about the show? Has she ever seen the show?
Yeah, so we refer to the show on our website as a parody, which helps us legally be able to make fun of the film, basically, which is all we do. But we also we take the characters and we make them do different crazy things. Like, sure, they hit an iceberg, but they don't really do any of this actual things. It's a different script. So we're pretty safe in that regard. But we do call it a parody just to be extra safe, because apparently Jim is not one to be messed with. And
Alexandra, would you say that's fair?
I would say that's fair.
Yeah, we've heard horror stories.
No, not horror stories. He's just, I think, like any creative, if somebody's going to take something you have made and the cost you $200 million 25 years ago, you're going to be quite protective over it. And it's protective of his creative. None of us would want something we originated to be taken and turned into something that was, disparaging or a bit, that's not fun. But, on closer inspection, I would suggest that both of our projects are nothing but, when you parody or when you say, oh my gosh, I had the best possible time and I put it on film and I'm sharing those stories with you, I don't know how you could be upset by that. It's a form of
I have to share with you, when I was in the when I was loading up on my sippy cup of wine before I went into the show, I heard a woman who was also bellied up to the bar, and she said, I heard this. She said, if I had 50 friends that wanted to see this, I would come 50 times.
Oh,
I swear to God. And I just thought, like a Rocky Horror, like a Charles Bush play,
absolutely,
that repeat business. You guys get a lot of repeat business,
like the movie did, like people going back
like
to
the
cinema
movie did,
15
participatory kind of stuff. Courtney, what have you experienced in terms of the fans?
Oh my gosh, our fans are the best, and they really are so loyal. Like I will have people write to me all the time, fans of the show, and say, when are you going on? When can I see you as Celine? When can I see you as Rose or Ruth? And they come back and they come back and they come back, and they really are a part of this journey from day one. And I think somebody had written, Ty, you can confirm this, I think this show is gay rights in our Stellar concert. So we have an amazing queer fan base, which I love. Yeah, they'll come back and back and back. And I experience being able to swing out and watch the show. As I told Ty, I understand why these people are coming back, because it's like candy, like you can't get enough. it moves so fast. There's so much to see, and I want to go back and back and back and see something that I missed the first time. And I think that it's like addictive in that way. Also like candy.
Celine has not attended. However, I've made great inroads with her whole team. You know, her publicist came a couple years ago and loved it and told them about it. David Foster came with her and he loves it, and he's kind of in our corner behind the scenes. I went to Vegas and met with her people, and they were incredibly appreciative. You know, their feeling is because she's been ill and unable to perform for a while, they said to me, it's really wonderful to see how much you have lifted up her brand and kept her alive in a way that we can't do right now. And we appreciate the care that you take with her material and with her identity and her brand. And so, you know, their opinion is rising tides lift all ships. So they love us. They've come to see the show. And I think, to circle back to Jim, I think if he got to see the show, he'd be like, okay, you guys are great. This is fun.
That's right. There's this documentary, there's this show about your huge movie. And he's like, yeah, I've heard about that. And that person would say, but have you seen seen it? You know, I'm just thinking though of the logistics of getting Celine Dion to your small theater venue. It would be a whole different show if she was sitting.
Oh, we'd need the Secret Service. Like, she'd have to be
absolutely.
disguised. No one can know.
Yeah, it would be.
Her concert producer came with me last month and was blown away and got very emotional. And his partner, who is basically her tour manager, is coming this month with his wife, who is Celine's assistant. So it's like we're creeping closer and closer to.
You might have to put on like a single performance.
A private show just for Celine. She, you know,
I've had dreams about that. I've had dreams about her like running through the backstage area and like grabbing Marla, who plays Celine, and shaking her with joy and glee and appreciation. I had a dream that we were in a massive, glorious rehearsal studio here in Manhattan, and it's just Celine sitting in a chair up against the wall, and I'm like, well, Diva, here it is. This is for you. Hope you like it. And we do a full run through for her. Like, at some point, we must merge, and I don't know how.
You also have to have the audience, because you know, we had good seats, you know, but we're like, I don't know, a third of the way back, a little to stage left. And but there is an infection that spreads, like laughter begets laughter.
Is that the word? An infection?
Yeah, it's infectious. Titanic is infectious. And I've saved my program from the Darryl Roth Theater. Now, I believe now we're recording this in May of 2023. Currently, how long are you scheduled to run in New York?
We're on sale through September. Mid-September.
And then what are the plans? Because you know your show will go on as just as the heart of the ocean. Where, I mean, is this going to be a franchise? Or are you going to go to Vegas? What's the plan? I mean, Alexandra, we're talking now about showing the documentary on cruises in conventions. You know,
at independent cinemas, and doing a reading of the full diaries, or more of the diaries, because we can't
keep feeding the pig.
That's amazing.
You know?
love.
What are your hopes and dreams for Titanic after this current engagement?
Well, my hopes include that we're able to extend beyond September and have a long, healthy run at the theater. Of course, we would love to see the show get to Broadway at some point. We're not sure if we're a Broadway show yet.
You'd lose that intimacy. You'd lose that infectiousness.
Yeah, the infectiousness of it could be lost, because we are a scrappy, intimate experience. So it may not be that ever, but if it's not that, I want it to be at the Darryl Roth as a benchmark staple thing that you do when you go to New York. You know what I mean? Obviously, with the press that we've gotten, there is a lot of interest from a lot of markets, and there are a lot of conversations happening. So,
and a tour
more
of
soon.
everywhere. And I'm telling you, what we know is that there are Titanic fans in the strangest of places and all places. Even,
Yeah.
we have our Titaniacs, as we call them, very close to my heart. But
Yes.
also, anybody you say, oh, I've just made this film about having a tiny part with my lines all cut in Titanic. Oh my God, that's my favorite movie. And
Yeah, that
you just can't get away from that. And there's this whole new generation, like all of our fans saw the film when they were 6, 10, 13, not when they were in their 30s like I was when I made the film. They were very young, they were drawn in by Jack and Rose, and then learned that this was a true story, and the rest kind of steered their life. But there are so many people who will always be able to tell you how old they were. They went with their brother and their girlfriend. They remember the sweets they were eating in the cinema. They can smell the popcorn. It's a memory that really sticks with everybody. And I
There's
get to the bottom of it in my film, and I still haven't really answered the question. I've just let it be what it is.
And there's a very small faction of folks very small, who don't like the movie, who think it's somehow disrespectful to the memory of those who perished. I mean, have you encountered any of that kind of thing, or that wouldn't come into the Darrow Roth Theater? Any kind of backlash?
Yeah, I mean, when we first started announcing the show as a commercial venture and they started really pushing the ads out there, there were people who didn't know what the show really was about, who would blow up our social media with like, this is offensive, how disrespectful, things like that. But the truth is we've written it in a way that's always been extremely thoughtful, because it is a real tragedy that did happen. And I have worked and continue to stress that we're never making fun of that. We've rewritten that whole part of the show to take it as far away from tragedy as possible. I direct it in a manner that is stoic yet fun. The vision for the props is wild, crazy, hyper comical things that take you out of reality as frequently as possible. So, in addition to all of that, at the end of the show, we do have an epilogue that we do dedicate to the memory of those who were lost, as we all sing along to "My Heart Will Go On" in a communal, very spiritual manner. So
yes.
I've gone out of my way to make sure that we honor the memory as much as we can.
You've done this before with like Devil Wears Prada, Mean Girls. You've done other movie satire adaptations.
Yeah.
Where, like, I'm just guessing, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing somewhere that when Ty Blue was a little boy, and whatever town you grew up in, you were putting shows on in the backyard that were the precursor to these kinds of things. Is that true? Like, have you always been a satirist and a comedian?
Well, I don't know. I've always been, there's kind of like a snarkiness in my family.
You've always been a bitch.
that my great grandmother and my grandmother both have. They're very, very funny, wry women, and I just absorbed that from them, I think. But yeah, I mean, I remember distinctly like borrowing my sister's baton and teaching myself to twirl the baton, and in the house, in the backyard. I remember blasting MC Hammer on my aunt's back patio and like trying to learn how to do the hammer dance. Like, it's always been in me in some form or fashion, but it's yeah, I can't get away. I went to a psychic a few times, because I've tried repeatedly to like get out of this business and go have a normal person life. And she clocked me and she said, "Why do you keep trying to like hide? Why are you're meant to be in front of people. You're meant to be leading. You're meant to be speaking and being creative and like creating fun things for people. That's what your skill set is. Why are you can't walk away from that. So stop trying." So I just feel like in my spirit, this is like what I'm meant to do on the planet.
Without, kind of like, I don't want you to do any spoilers, but for folks that haven't seen Titanic yet, or might be coming to New York and want to see it, this sounds all very titillating, but I know the scenes that I remember that made me laugh out loud. What are your favorite moments in the show that you can share without spoiling anything?
Ooh, without giving anything away. That's hard, Nelson. I would say that uh, what has been made of the character of Ruth DeWippicator will surprise and completely charm you without giving anything away. That is the thing that continuously makes me laugh over and over again. And I will say, one of the great things about the wonderful theater experiences in my life, which this is one of the top experiences of my whole life, is a show that you can go into when you're having whatever kind of day that you're having. You walk into the theater and all of that melts away because you're there for the laughter and the communion with people in the audience. And especially when I get the privilege of getting to do Celine, having that moment of being an MC and guiding these people through this story. I'm going to take care of you. This is about this tragedy, but this is also my kooky zany take. I love you. I'm giving you my love for this. Like, do you want to go on this ride with me? And that is what has kept me doing theater. I have to say that also, like Ty, when this audition came into my mailbox, I was at a point where I was like, I don't want to do theater anymore. I had a magnificent experience on Broadway that I thought could not be topped. And this audition came in and I was like, well, I've been working on Celine. Why not? Why not? And it has taken me on a crazy journey. And what else could I say? You come for the laughs and you get blown away by the sheer artistry and the actual love and heart that is in this show. It's so much deeper than just a satire or a parody. It is so smart. And I tell people that have maybe balked at the premise when I've told them that I'm doing this thing, no, you have to come. It's so smart. And when people come, they are blown away by the intelligence and by the heart. The heart that will go on.
Is it locked in or does it continue to evolve?
Well, that's a great question for this month because we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary off Broadway and, yay. But with that comes, it's like contracts are kind of coming to an end and people are like, all right, I got to go do something else for a minute for my mental health. So we're literally in the midst this month of a massive cast changeover. And so there's a lot of conversation about like, well, this is the way that this original person has leaned into the aesthetic of this character. And is this what it's always going to be? Are we open to other kind of like slightly different interpretations? So I always say it's a living, breathing amoeba in that it is a very present pop culture thing that we're like grabbing from memes and spoofs and skits and bringing them in. So it is alive in that way. But I do think that like the overall tone of the show, in that it has a lot more heart than you would think. It's a lot more grounded than you would think. Yes, it's bizarre and kooky and crazy, but the bookwork is tight and stiff and important, like the film. And it's also a concert at the same time. So like there are different conceptual pieces of it that I always want it to be. It's a Celine Dion pop-up concert where she is the hostess and she is marionetting these fools around the stage on her behalf to serve her memory of what she would prefer the story to be. So yes, and I don't know. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. And where does this leave Titanic for each of you now? Do you watch it whenever it comes on television, or are you fed up with Titanic? Like, enough with Titanic, I do it during the day. Do you want to go to Belfast and see the museum? Where do you stand with the actual Titanic now, Courtney?
Oh, I am still obsessed, like fangirly. When we were about to go into rehearsals a year ago, I have a thing where I get obsessed with one topic, and I just went deep dive into all Titanic things. I watched the movie. I watched A Night to Remember. I listened to all these Titanic podcasts. I got deep into the story of, what was his name? Bruce Ismay, and how they blamed him for the ship. And then that was his whole life. Like, that was it. He died very sad after that. I listened to a podcast about the making of the Titanic and this crazy story of how a disgruntled crew member spiked the lobster chowder when they were filming in Canada. Do you know that? You know this, Alexandra?
It happened right before we were in Mexico.
With
and
PCP,
they had
right?
spiked the clam chowder. Never found out who it was. Everybody was just wandering around the set high as kites.
Maybe it was Celine Dion.
It was Celine Dion.
Hey.
It was me. It was Celine.
Wow.
Oh my God. That story stuck with me for a while.
Yeah.
And
we
I'm still
don't have
obsessed.
any of those in our film because we were none of us there. That was them filming the present day.
Right.
Ah.
And Ty, were you interested prior to other than the Cameron film?
Oh, to the event
To
itself?
Titanic. Do you have any Titania in your blood?
I must say that I don't. However, I'm a big like documentary person. I care deeply about the actual events of things. Like I love the movie. It was emotional. I have a very real attachment to the first time I saw it as well, Alexandra. But I don't like circle back to it. You know what I mean? It's like, if you knew the DMs that I get and the messages and the text, if every single Titanic meme or GIF or video or parody I receive. So it's like, I get it all the time.
So what's next? What are you
well.
going to do after now? Like Titanic has sailed. What's next?
Well, I'm co-creating and directing a new dance project that's going to open off Broadway in the fall. It's called Tipsy Whisper, and it's kind of set in a 1920s speakeasy situation based around a woman named Texas who moved to New York from Texas and like dominated the nightlife scene in the 20s. And so we're kind of doing a semi-autobiographical nightlife dance experience. That's what I'm working on right now. It's gonna be very good.
Fantastic. And your website, tell us the website so we can keep track of you.
Oh, it's tieblue.com.
And that's Ty with an E. We'll put that up on the page as well. And Courtney, where do we find you?
Well, this is so funny. Among other projects, I have another project that is also on a ship that I've been working on for about 5 years now. It is a musical adaptation of Moby Dick, and it is told through an incredible rock soul score. We've recorded an entire album, which will be coming out very soon, and we're just hoping to have a workshop and a concert and invite all the people. And yeah, I just can't get away from the ocean, I guess. And sinking ships. Sinking ships.
You get those ideas about leaving New York out of your heads, you two. None of that.
Yeah,
and
I think we're locked
Alexandra,
in now.
Alexandra and I met in New York 30 some years ago. So we've got to get her back to New York. So in the meantime, we're grateful for the podcast. We're grateful for Titanic and for you talking to us on Titanic Talk today. Make sure you do watch Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, and maybe, Ty, you will want to set it to music. You just never know.
Oh. Ooh, all right.
Titanic Diaries.
There you go.
Ooh.
Everyone here at Titanic Talk would like to congratulate the Titanic Musical Company for winning 3 Lucille Lortel Awards last week in New York. Outstanding Musical, Outstanding Lead Performance in a Musical by Marla Mindell, and Outstanding Costume Design. Get your tickets now. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review. And if you'd like to hear more podcasts like this, hit the subscribe button. For information on where you can see Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, go to shipofdreamsfilm.com. Titanic Talk is a production of Ship of Dreams Film Limited.